Well, good morning and welcome to today's webinar. This is Maximizing Time Management with Lutheran Service Builder. This will be an overview webinar that goes through all the core features of Lutheran Service Builder, but we're going to really focus on the things that help save you time on a week in, week out basis. My name is Peter Frank. I am the Senior Manager of Concordia Technology Solutions here at Concordia Publishing House. Lutheran Service Builder falls in kind of this mixed hybrid of both being a software but also a music product, so both of those groups work with it. So if you ever have any questions about how to use it, Concordia Technology Solutions is the team that helps you, but our music team is the one who oversees the direction of the product and answers all those tough questions about Lutheran worship and liturgy and lectionaries and all that fun stuff. So I am kind of a mix of both. I have a background in both theology and technology, so kind of fits well for me to be here presenting for you today. My information is on the screen. My email is the best way to reach me, although you can call my phone. That is my office phone. It comes right over here, which I always do that to double check. I do have it forwarding to voicemail right now, so I shouldn't be interrupted by that. A few housekeeping items before we begin. I'm planning about 50 minutes for a presentation, or for the presentation, although I may go over that. I saved the last 10 minutes for question and answers. But in case we don't have enough questions, I have more than enough material to take us for that full hour. And we will end at that hour. I want to be respectful of your time. This is all about maximizing time management, and so if I go over, it kind of defeats the purpose. I will ask that you ask your questions throughout. It'll come right into my queue here, and that'll give me an idea of how many I have to answer. Now, I'm the only one on the broadcast today, so I won't be answering live in the chat, but I will be answering during that Q&A time. Every once in a while, I'll see a question in there that I can answer during the presentation, so I may do that too. I'll be recording this webinar. In fact, we're doing that right now. So if you're watching the recording, thanks for joining us after the fact. But for those of you who are here live, you get that benefit of knowing that this is happening right now, and you can ask me the questions and I can answer them during our Q&A time. All right, well, a little bit of background about Lutheran Service Builder. If you are not familiar with it, it's a PC-based software that allows churches to quickly and easily plan services, create custom service folders, export presentations, and conform with copyright requirements. And we're going to touch on all that in various levels of detail. Now, I do want to give you the heads up that we are moving Lutheran Service Builder into an online app that is in process right now. We're in field testing with about a little over 100 churches actively using it and giving us their feedback. So you'll see that announced later on this year. Early summer, we're going to roll it out to all current customers, and late summer, we're going to roll it out to everybody else. So we're very excited about that. It's going to take the best of what's in Lutheran Service Builder right now and take it a few steps farther, make it even better. So lots of exciting things happening, although today we're going to focus on the current version, Lutheran Service Builder 2, which is that PC-based version. All right, a few assumptions that I have made about you who are joining me today. First, I'm assuming you're fairly new to Lutheran Service Builder. If you are a longtime user and expert, you probably won't gain as much value as somebody who is relatively new. There will be tips and tricks that I'll show you along the way that should be helpful to you, but I just wanted to clarify that the material was meant for those who are more new. That's why we've got this as that overview webinar. I'm assuming that if you have used it at all, you've had informal training at best. We have really started building up our training materials over the last year and a half, 2 years, but many people who have used it have never had formal training. So I'm assuming that. I'm assuming you're eager to get more out of the software, otherwise you wouldn't be here today. And I'm also assuming you're very busy. That's kind of the theme, time management. We have done numerous polls and surveys of our customers and of those who follow our blogs and the like. And one of the most common themes we hear from both administrators and church workers, including pastors, is that time management is one of the biggest challenges. And this comes in many different forms, as does the solution. So while this is a solution for concerns about time management, of course, it's not the only thing. This is not going to make everything better for you, but it will make worship planning and building the service folder and the bulletins that much easier. And so that's where we're going to go next. Now, this presentation, this webinar will save you time, and Lutheran Service Builder itself will save you time if your church uses any of the following. The 1 year or 3 year lectionary. I'm going to ask that question in a couple of minutes, which one you use. Most people use the 3 year lectionary, at least within the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, although we seem to have a growing number of 1 year lectionary users. So I'm going to ask you that in a minute, and we've got a nice selection of people here. We'll see what the percentages roll out to be. So if you use the lectionary, this will be helpful to you. Or if you use hymns from Lutheran Service Book. Now, Lutheran Service Book came out in 2006. It has been widely adopted by our church body, with over 80% of the congregations having adopted that or Lutheran Service Builder. So, and we get more every day still. So that's great. If you're using that, this will be a great time saver for you. If you use a similar service structure on a regular basis. Now, if you're using the divine service settings that are in Lutheran Service Book, this will be extremely helpful and save you lots of time. Even if you are not using those exactly, but if you're using something similar on a regular basis. So maybe mix it up and you have different structures for the first and third Sundays and for the second and fourth, and you do something really out of the box when you have a fifth Sunday. If there's some consistency in how you set up your service, Lutheran Service Builder will help you save time. And please, I should have clarified that this at the beginning. This is one of those or things, not an and thing. So you don't have to have all of these things. If you have any of these, Lutheran Service Builder will save you time. The last one that I'm going to talk about today, and there are more than this, but if you use creative worship for the Lutheran parish, we're going to take a look at that in a little while. That will this will also help you with that. So this will save time for a variety of different reasons. So if any one of these apply, you're going to get value out of this. If none of these apply, then you may not get the value. Or if you're looking to move into this, but you're not there yet, you will still get the value from that. But that's going to be kind of the focus of our discussion. So before we go any farther, I'd like you to tell me a little bit about yourself. I've got several polls here. We'll only spend a few seconds on each. So we're going to start off with just letting me know what the role, what your primary role at church is. That gives me an idea of how to tailor the presentation today. So please select the option that most closely describes your primary role. All right, looks like we've got about 50% administrators and the mix of pastors and church musicians after that. Very good. All right, let's go to the next one. Are you currently using Lutheran Service Builder in your congregation? Yes, no, or no, but planning to soon. All right, looks like we've got a good mix. It's still about 2/3 that are already used it, so that is great. Very good. You'll definitely get value out of this. And for those of you who are not, you'll gain the value of knowing what Lutheran Service Builder is all about. All right, next one though. For those of you who are using it, what would you consider your level of, your skill level of Lutheran Service Builder to be? Expert, advanced, intermediate, novice, or newbie? All right, well, we've got it kind of all over the map. Expert, intermediate, newbie, so very good. It looks like we're a little bit more on the newbie side of things. So for you who are an expert, I would love to hear your feedback as we go through. If you've got ideas that I don't mention, put them in the chat. I'll be happy to share them with everybody else. But for the rest of you, I've got plenty of material that'll help you. All right, the last question is the one I mentioned that I was going to ask. What lectionary are you using? Oops, I gotta actually hit the launch button. There we go. 3 year, 1 year, other, none, or not sure. And for the most part, yeah, this is follows the trend. We got almost everybody at the 3 year with somebody who's not sure, and that's okay. That often happens where it's kind of a mixture. You may depend on the lectionary except for special situations, and the special situations may be sermon series that last several weeks at a time. So very good. Thank you for sharing that information with me. We're gonna keep moving forward with the presentation for today. So our outline will be to plan a service using Lutheran Service Builder, and as I go through that, I'm gonna point out many of the time-saving tricks that you can use as we go. We'll create a custom liturgy, so we'll make modifications. So while we'll start with the divine service that is setting 1 that's in the Lutheran Service Book, we're gonna tweak it from there and save that so that it can be reused again and again. We're going to export to a bulletin or to a print format, another way of saying that, and then we're going to export to a presentation format. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to shift my screen over to Lutheran Service Builder. Make sure that is up and running. There we go. All right, so this is the main screen of Lutheran Service Builder, the home screen, if you will. The first place that we're going to go and click is Calendar. Now this shows you your church year calendar, and this is for June. So today we're going to look at at June 3rd, the second Sunday after Pentecost. Now when you click on it, it'll say which feast, festival, or occasion do you want to use. This is one of the key things to start off and to pre-populate, or at least give you all the necessary suggestions that are going to save you time, and that's based off of the 3-year lectionary. Now we can change this to 1 year. I'm not going to do that today because we don't have any 1-year users watching. So we'll stick with the 3-year. It's going to tell me the second Sunday after Pentecost. Now, I could also look, and if there's a different occasion in the church year that we're looking at, like the visitation, this falls within the octave, the 7 days before, the 7 days after, or that day of, depending on what we pick. So we're not going to do that, but that would adjust the suggestions based on the readings assigned for that day. So we're going to go with the second Sunday after Pentecost, and we're going to click Plan this service. All right, now the first thing it asks is to choose an order of service. Now, because I use it frequently and I'm most comfortable with Divine Service Setting 1, we're going to go with that today. But you do have other settings in there. There's five settings of the Divine Service in Lutheran Service Book, as well as daily offices and other services, including the service of prayer and preaching, which is a great quick service. And I say quick, not that it's meant to be quick, but it doesn't include the Lord's Supper. And so this is good for things like a daily chapel, where you may not have the full hour to dedicate to it, but it gets you thoroughly through it. But that's not what we're going to do today. We're going to do the Divine Service Setting 1. We'll click on that. It shows you that preview, and we're going to click OK. Now, this takes you into the planning view. And on the far left, you have your order of service. On the middle, you have kind of your toolbar for inserting and searching and modifying or looking for which elements to include. And then when you click on them, it'll give you the more details that you need. And we're going to go through this in kind of great detail. So this service is divided into 3 sections. Confession and absolution, service of the word, service of the sacrament. And some of these terms I say service, but this order of worship, this divine service setting is divided in those 3. So we're going to start with confession and absolution and begin with the hymn of invocation. It's a very good place to start. All right, so I've already chosen the hymns that we're going to use today, but I will show you how I've selected some of those as we go through. Now, I made my choices based off the recommendations within Creative Worship, which we'll look at in a little bit. In fact, I didn't pull that up to begin, so I will have to do that at some point. But I'm going to show you where you would go as you are doing this, even if you're not using Creative Worship, because Creative Worship and Builder really go hand in hand. So the hymn of invocation, which we're choosing today, is 904, Blessed Jesus at Your Word. Now, we'll look at the readings as we get closer to it, but the theme for today is Remember the Sabbath Day. And that's what we're going to put in as our sermon theme. That's what the lectionary kind of revolves around. So Blessed Jesus at Your Word is the suggested opening hymn. You can preview the text or the text with the melody by clicking on these tabs in the top right. But I want to draw your attention to this info tab here, where it explains all the significant details about this selected hymn. So the author and composer, the text, and the melody are detailed here. The text has several different people who are involved, both from a writing and a translation standpoint. This goes way back into the 1600s. Copyright information, public domain. The tune, the meter, the key, and then you start to see these blue links, and this will help you find other related hymns. So like in this first case, find all hymns that have this meter. So if you want to use this tune, but you want to choose different words, you could do that by searching for all tunes that have that meter. we're not going to do that today, but I wanted to point that out. The next area is a little bit more significant. So topics, beginning of service, Pentecost, Word of God, all of those flow really well for this specific spot because we're talking about the Word of God and the place it should have in your life, and we're remembering the Sabbath day and going and hearing and receiving God's gifts through the Word and sacrament. So that makes sense. Of course, beginning of the service is a great thing because we're at the hymn of invocation. And then Pentecost, we're in that season of Pentecost. So beginning of service, if we click search, it's going to show all of the other hymns that fit with that topic, beginning of service. Now, what I like about this, because it not only does this for you, but it kind of gives you some of the teaching that you need, the tools, or the teaching of the tools. So like here, topic, beginning of service, there's a colon, there's quotes. That shows you how you could structure your search in the future. So we started with one that already fit that criteria, and it gave us that search, but at any time you could go and type this exact criteria in here, type in topic, colon, beginning of service, and quotes, and that just helps you really narrow down to all of the hymns that are beginning of service. It also shows you these filters here, and pre-selects show hymns and sort by number. You could sort by alphabet or by relevance. Now these are all relevant, so you don't have to worry about that. But as you hover over it, you'll see what your search term came in from. And we'll look at a few other searches later on. Now, we're going to go ahead and select this. So 904, on the suggestions, there's a hymn of the day, which is one of the propers for the lectionary, hymns based on the readings, and other suggested hymns that our team here has put together for you. But this goes into the readings, and Blessed Jesus at your word. There's two ways to select it. You can double click it or drag and drop. Now the double clicking doesn't always work for me, and it's kind of quirky. We're going to fix that in the online version. So I tend to drag and drop it. And so when I drop it, now the little yellow triangle that indicates something's missing is gone, and it'll tell me hymn of invocation is 904, Blessed Jesus at your word. So all of that is very good. We're going to keep moving forward. So the next thing that you have in here are the red rubrics. These are the instructions, and you may want to remove those. We'll remove those later on as we modify the order of service, but we're going to keep going. Invocation, pretty straightforward. There's really only one way to do that. The exhortation, which is based on this setting, although you could swap it out for one of the other settings. Some of those are identical, some of those are very different. Depends on what you want to use. We're going to use the default one for today. Then we move into confession of sins, which again has a default, or you could swap it out for one of these other ones. And you can preview them just by clicking. We're going to stick with defaults today because that's easiest. Absolution or declaration of grace, that depends on whether you have a pastor or somebody who is not ordained leading worship. So if you, for example, have a vicar leading, like we do in my church frequently, you might want to go with the declaration of grace rather than the absolution, because the vicar is not a called and ordained servant of Christ yet. So today we're going to go with absolution. We've got our pastor serving us and leading worship. And that kind of does it for the confession and absolution part of this divine service. Next, we'll go into service of the word, and this is where the lectionary really comes into play. First, introit psalm or entrance hymn. We're going to stick with the introit, which is chosen for the second Sunday after Pentecost. Next, we have the Kyrie, which we're going to stick with the default version of that, although there are other ways of doing that. The hymn of praise, you can select from the Gloria in Excelsis, or this is the feast. I'm going to stick with the Gloria for today. Salutation and collect of the day is chosen for this day in the church year. You can see that right there, second Sunday after Pentecost. So as I go through here, I'm just clicking and reviewing. You can know that the default is what's chosen. So when you're planning your service, you don't have to go through this time-sensitive step, because it's already chosen for you. And as you get into these readings, that's what you see here as well. So first off, Old Testament reading, like we said before, the theme is around the Sabbath day. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Not only does it pre-select the readings for you, it gives you a way to preview that. So we've got that there. We'll move into the psalm or gradual. I'm going to choose the gradual for this because it is chosen for the second Sunday after Pentecost. The epistle is already chosen as well from 2 Corinthians. We'll continue down with the Alleluia in the verse, and we can choose the common Alleluia in verse or go to the verse of the day, again chosen for this day. And finally, we have the Holy Gospel. This is from Mark chapter 2, and it's the Pharisees saying, look, why are you doing this on the Sabbath? The disciples were plucking the heads of grain as they walked through the grain fields, and it happened to be on the Sabbath. So again, fits with that theme. And next, after that, we have the hymn of the day. Now remember, that is one of the propers, and that shows up first on your list of suggested hymns. So I can click on 906, O Day of Rest and Gladness. Sounds like a pretty good hymn for this day in the church year. And if I double click it, that time it worked. There we go. It drops it down there. Now, that is, again, because it's a proper chosen at the beginning. We'll look at a few more ways of searching for hymns in a moment. We'll continue down here, and it'll say, which creed do you want to include? Well, we'll stick with the Nicene Creed, which is appropriate for today because we will, or for this day in the church year, we'll be celebrating Holy Communion. And then next we have Prayer of the Church. And this is where I'm going to pause and kind of go outside of Builder for a few minutes to show a quick trick, not really a trick, it's helpful advice maybe, informing you of something you may not know. So the Prayer of the Church could be a lengthy thing to write. You do want to have some variety in there, just because if you say the same thing over and over again with the prayers, it loses its meanings as the church is praying. You may, there's value in repetition in many different places of the service. That's why we use the hymnal. But what's nice about the Prayer of the Church is that there is an alternative for you to do that would be consistent with what other congregations are praying and easy for you to enter. So if you go to LutheranServiceBuilder.com, it'll take you to our website, that's just a shortcut to get to music.cph.org/Lutheran-service-builder. Hard to remember that, just type in LutheranServiceBuilder.com. And then in the bottom, there's a link called Downloads. It's in our footer here, Downloads. And this will take you to our Let Us Pray files. Now, these are prayers put by the LCMS, or put together by the LCMS Worship Office that are appropriate for the days in the church year. Now, we don't have June yet. It looks like I jumped ahead. Those are supposed to be coming out this week. We wait until we get them from the office of worship office, and then we put them up here. So keep an eye out for that. I should have double checked that before I started. I forgot how far ahead I was going. We're about a month ahead. But you can see them listed there with the dates and the day of the in the church year, and then which lectionary. We're going to just choose. We'll go with May 27th for right now. And it will download this file as a zip file. And when I click on it, it'll give me what's called a Lutheran Service Builder file. When I double click on that, it'll automatically load into Lutheran Service Builder. And when I come back in here, I can click off of this and update, go to Write My Own, and there we have May 27th. Now, again, this is a week early because we don't have June 3rd in there yet, but it serves the point for demonstration. So when I click on that, it shows this pre-formatted Prayer of the Church, which will be used by many other congregations within our church body. And so that allows you to quickly and easily add this to your service. And it's got the spot for inserting special petitions. So in this case, especially. And so you can customize it, but it really goes through and ties in with the church year. And so that's fantastic. Now here we're talking about Holy Trinity, so it's going to be a little bit different than what we need for this service, but I think the point is still valid, and I'll show you how that looks when we get into the export. All right, we'll continue down. You have the offering and the offertory. The suggestions for the offertory are a default, or you could do something similar, which there's some hymns that could be used as the offertory. You can see that there. One thing I didn't show before, and I think these are both, yeah, they're just one stanza in here for the offertory, but you can choose how many stanzas you have. We'll look at that as we get into the bulletin, but let's go with Create in Me. And then we'll continue down into the service of the sacrament. So you have the preface, and the proper preface, which again is assigned, it's proper for this day in the church year. So you can see that. You could go with the abbreviated one where it just shows the beginning and the end, but we're going to go with the proper preface for the second Sunday of Pentecost, after Pentecost, pardon me. The Sanctus, the prayer of thanksgiving, and then the words of our Lord. And I like to point this out because there's this kind of weird choice, and it's not weird by the content, but by the titles. Left column and right column. And if you are looking at this divine service setting 1, you will see in Lutheran Service Book, there are 2 options and they're in different columns on the page, but they're not named one thing or the other. So that's why we go with left column or right column. So left column goes through words of our Lord, proclamation of Christ, and the Lord's Prayer. Right column goes Lord's Prayer first, and then words of our Lord. So you can choose either one of those. We'll go with the left column today. They have the Pax Domini, which again is chosen by this setting, the Agnus Dei. And you have options there from the other settings, but we're going to keep that as is with the default. And then the distribution. Now we'll leave these in here for now. We're going to adjust the rubrics later on, but we have the dismissal hymn, or sorry, distribution hymns that come after this dismissal, which is, yeah, we'll talk about that as we get into customizing the service. So distribution hymns, I want to show 2 ways of searching. First, if you go up here to search and you know the hymn number, 760, what God ordains is always good. I'm just going to type that number in, it'll come up here, and I can double click it and it'll get added in there. But let's say for the next one, you know that it says something about mortal flesh keeps silence. The hymn is let all mortal flesh keep silence, but you don't remember exactly how that goes. You can go in here. Oops, apparently I lost my cursor there. So we'll just say mortal flesh, which is kind of a weird search term, but you get some options. Now I see the one I'm looking for, but let's see why these other ones came up. See, when you look at, O come all ye faithful, now in flesh appearing, born of a virgin, immortal he comes, both of those words are in there. And I could go in and search for just mortal flesh, and it'll, with quotes around it, and it'll say, okay, look for that phrase, robed in mortal flesh is why that one's in there. If your beloved son, O God, and that is all in our mortal flesh and blood. Third line on the first stanza right there. So you can see why those came up, but really we're looking for this one right here. So let all mortal flesh keep silence. Very good. And we'll continue down. We have the post-communion canticle, which we can choose thank the Lord or the Nunc Dimittis. And we're going to stick with thank the Lord. That's easier to say. Not that we have to say Nunc Dimittis, but for presentation purposes, we'll keep it with this. All right, lastly, the post-communion collect, which you have a couple suggestions, not for every day in the church year, but for different seasons, some are more appropriate, and this will give you the one that is default. All right, the last thing is the benediction, which you can see you have the default and then many other ones. All right, so we are at 10:28 right now. I've done a lot of talking, a lot of explanation, but I've chosen the defaults on most of these. If I was not explaining this to you like I have been today, it would be a couple-minute process to go through. All of the defaults are already chosen, so really all you have to do is select the hymns if you are sticking with this divine service setting 1 as is. And we're going to go with that for a moment, and then we're going to come back and modify it as we get into the custom service. But I want to show you how easy, knowing how easy that was. It took me about 15, almost 20 minutes, but I explained each step. Well, from here, you can go into the bulletin view, which is ready for print. Now, there's a number of different ways you can print this, and we'll explain that in a few minutes. But I want to show you just how it comes across, and everything is already chosen and displayed here. We'll scroll a little faster. You could print this out right now and have a very solid bulletin with no parts that are missing or anything. And that is a huge time saver. If you don't have the time to customize it, you can at least know that within a few minutes, I can export this out. And when we first started this project, it was Bob Lale, he was a seminarian at the time, and he presented to several people at our synodical headquarters, including Concordia Publishing House. And his goal was to show how you could go from nothing to bulletin in 5 minutes. And he's able to do that with Lutheran Service Builder. He built it with that thing in mind. Now that is some time savings. We know that there are other things that come up that may delay it, such as if you're including your service folder within your bulletin that has news and announcements, that may take time. But at least you can go from nothing to service folder in 5 minutes. All right, let's keep going on. The next thing we're going to talk about before we get into actually exporting is modifying the service to meet your needs. So that's where I go back to what we talked about before. If you use the same kind of service structure on a regular basis, it doesn't have to be straight out of Lutheran Service Book. And we're going to go ahead and make some of those modifications now. All right, first off, Hymn of Invocation is where we start. One thing that is very common in creative worship is to have what we call an As We Gather. That is a introductory paragraph that explains the theme of the service. Now you can add custom elements in by going to My Worship Resources, this fourth icon up in the top under Home Actions. And we already have one in there, but I'll show you how we do that. You go to New, and you can choose what type. It's a proper, it's a reading, it's a collect, or just a default. We're going to just call this As We Gather, and we'll put New in there since we already have one. You can choose to hide the caption by default or not, overwrite default subcaption or not, shared rule, put it in one of these others, and so it'll come up as a suggestion or not. And then we'll just put this in here that says As We Gather, or really enter information here. We'll save that. You can see if you're putting a hymn or if there's an author that you need to credit to or copyright, you have that. We're just going really basic right now. Under advanced, you could have key if it's a music or a tune. You could put related scripture, one topic per line, related topics. So if you're searching by topic, it would show up. Remove during seasons, you could select that. Really, you don't need all of that. We're just going to save this right here. As We Gather, New. Oh, and oops, let's go into general. There, if you double click it, so I forgot the caption is what shows in there. And As We Gather, New will be the name of that. Double clicking this again sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. We'll put that in there just so that you see that. Okay, let's go back to our service plan. We're going to go and insert an element. So I'll click this insert button here. And down at the bottom will be all my custom elements. So we'll move As We Gather, New up to the top. When we click on it, it says As We Gather, enter information here. Now, you can edit this right from the screen by going to the far right and clicking Edit. And it changes this view to what we were looking at before. So I'm going to go in and copy paste this. I already have this already put out or written out, copied from Creative Worship, and I'll go ahead and save that. All right, so now when I go to my export to view my service folder, that's the first thing that comes here. And I can show the title as well or turn it off depending on how we have it defaulted. Or I could just say As We Gather with no text. That doesn't serve the purpose, so we're going to keep that on. But yeah, now it talks about the theme, and it says the Sabbath day is the culmination of the week and gives meaning to all the other days. That's really what this theme, the readings, are all about. Let's go through and modify this some more. All right, so the rubrics I mentioned before is something that we may want to modify. Those are great if you are teaching people what to do during the service. Maybe not something you do every week, unless it's a week where you're expecting lots of visitors, like the preschool sings. So we're going to go ahead and remove some of those for the interest of presentation and showing customization. So we'll just hit the delete button there. Silence for God's word and self-reflection. You can also right-click and hit delete. We'll continue going down. There's some things over by the prayer of the church. This is where you might have the passing of the peace or the greeting. This is just a rubric right now, but we might want to add a different element for that. So we're going to remove that. And we'll keep going down. During the distribution, there's some explanation of how that goes. In most churches, you don't need to tell people every week. Most of this is for the pastor and the worship assistant. So it's not necessary to include in the service folder. So we're going to delete each one of these things. We'll start at the bottom, delete that rubric, delete that, and delete that. And really it's just going to say distribution there, and then the distribution hymns. All right, benediction is where we close. And if you are like me, you've probably not often been in a congregation or in a worship service where there's not a closing hymn. It's very common. It's not part of the order of service, but we're going to add that in. So we'll click insert, and we'll take a hymn and we'll drag and drop that to the bottom. And I'm going to double click on it to rename and call that the closing hymn. Now, when I click on the hymn, it'll give me suggestions because it's a hymn. There is no default closing hymn, but we could choose one of these other ones. So let's say we were searching for the topic of Trinity. We could go in that. And the one I'm looking for is 794, the Lord my God be praised. Within the information, it's praise and adoration and Holy Trinity. So I'm going to just drop that in as the closing hymn. Now, the other thing you might want to add, well, one of the many other things you might want to add would be like a children's message. And so that's often done before the readings, after the collect of the day, when the congregation is seated. So we'll go and click insert. And that is one of the custom elements I've created. So, children's message, all children are welcome to come to the front of the church for a special message. Now, that's not part of the order of service. Not all churches do that, but that for the churches that do, it's something that happens frequently, and you don't want to be creating that and adding that every time. So we will drag and drop, put it right before the Old Testament reading. That's where my church does it, and we'll just leave it there. So now I've made a number of modifications to this service. I've added the As We Gather, I've added a closing hymn, I've added children's message to it. I have removed rubrics and unnecessary explanations for people who have done this before. So it's based on Divine Service Setting 1, but it is a new order of service because things have changed. So I'll go ahead and save as, and we'll say Divine Service Setting 1 modified, and I'm going to put the date in there, but that's just for my purposes. I would recommend for you, if you have specific times that you use that, put Divine Service Setting 1 first and third Sundays if you're going to do that differently. Maybe it's just you want to put the explanation of what changed. You could list those things, As We Gather, closing hymn, children's message, something like that. Some kind of naming convention that allows you to choose that. So now when I go back to my calendar, and I'm going to click on Pentecost 3, the third Sunday after Pentecost for June 10th, and I go to plan this service the week following, I can go down to custom order of services and see that here. And when I click on it, it gives me the default information. So I can preview all that. There's my closing hymn, click OK. Now I'm going through this process again, but it's for a different week, different lectionary readings. All of those kind of things that I selected don't get pre-selected for me because I saved it. Those, it's just the order of things that gets saved. So As We Gather is at the top. I can go and edit and put in my new information there. I can choose this week's hymn of invocation. I can go down and choose a closing hymn for the end. All of those are already in place so that I don't have to add them again and again. And for example, like the children's message, that's already in place right before the Old Testament reading. I don't have to remember to add that again. So it's a modified service that I use consistently. And that was why I asked that question. If you're doing a brand new order of service every week, that's probably not going to save you too much time doing it in here. But if there's some consistency, even if you are not following this to a T, Lutheran Service Builder can save you that time. And I know of many congregations who will do like a rotation of 4 different types. And you know, I've heard of at least one church who will do the settings in that order. So the first week is the first setting, the second week is the second setting, etc. And then on those 5th Sundays, you get the Divine Service setting number 5, Luther's Divine Service setting. So there's different ways of doing it. And if you do something regularly, you can save time by making that kind of a standard practice within Service Builder. And that's where we're going to go from here, is some of these things that you do on a regular basis, you can set those up as your defaults. So let's move into, let's first switch back. We'll go back to the calendar and choose the 2nd Sunday. And we're going to edit this bulletin. So the first Sunday in June, 2nd Sunday after Pentecost. Here we go. Now, there's some themes and formats that I want to talk about here. The theme is kind of like a style sheet that tells you what the export will look like. So we may say, all right, the default, or like I'll show you what no formatting looks like. Really bare bones right there. You get some bold, but that's about it. You could go to the Times New Roman one, which is a more traditional look at it. There we go. That's pretty nice. It's got those crosses in there. You do large print, which blows everything up so it's easier to read. There you go. Or you can create your own. And if you go to Edit Style Sheets and Create New, you can go through element by element and modify it to meet your needs. Now, I'm not going to show all of that today because that was what last month's webinars were about. So if you are interested in learning more about that, you can go and go to our resource center at resources.concordiatechnology.org and find that there under Products Lutheran Service Builder. But we're not going to talk about that more today. I just want to highlight that if you have a specific style that you want to use, different fonts, different colors, different sizing, you can save that as a style sheet and reuse it again and again and again. And that is much better than modifying it in Word every week, which I hear some people do. Some people will export it to Word and change the font. That's the first thing they do. And they'll have the step-by-step guide for how to modify the bulletin to meet our needs. When really you can do most of that right in here under the formats and then the themes and then also the formats. So one of those formats would be like title only. I'm going to go to default here. And that would remove a lot of the extra things while still showing some of the rubrics and such. You can also modify the layout here. So like legal folded, letter full, if you print them out in whole sheets, margins and music scale. That you really don't want to mess with that too much. All right, so we'll stop with that and we'll go back to UI default and look at a few other things. So one of the things you can do is choose to go with the melody and print that out. That requires your hymn license, but in order to print the text, you need the hymn license as well for most hymns. If you have a hymn where the text is public domain but the tune is not, you are welcome to export the text without the melody without having a hymn license, but that's an exception, not the rule. So other things that you can do, you can change the chant pointing, whether it's on or off. You can add in a psalm tone if you are chanting. Wherever possible, you could change it to the melody. And a lot of these things can be set under formats. So service formats, you could create a new one that says how each element is supposed to show up. All right, let's move to presentation next because I'm already running short on time. We're at 10:43. Presentation is to export to some kind of slide deck, maybe a PowerPoint, maybe a media shot file, depending on what you use for your presentations. And as you can see here, it divides everything up into individual slides. Now, depending on what you want to modify, you may need to change some things. So actually here, as we gather, that didn't save before. Go ahead and put that back in. All right, now that's saved. So when we go to PowerPoint, there it is. Now you may say that's too dark. I want to go to this one, which is the basic font. There's a basic style. There's really not too much there. You can also create your own. So I'm going to show an example of this. Let's say, season of Pentecost. Is it Penta or Pente? I always get the confused. Pente with an E. So Pentecost. We'll save that. I'm going to go through and change some of my styles. I love using rubato, and I'll choose rubato for just about everything. So body, caption, copyright, heading, we'll change that to rubato, and rubric, we'll change that to rubato. The rubrics, we're going to make a dark red. And I'm just going to click OK, see where we're at with that. Now, that looks a little bit better. Now, it's the season of Pentecost, so I would like to have more churchier colors. So what I can do is I can update the background to be an image. And we have what we call digital pyramid. So I'll select that. It's kind of skewed because I have the wrong format size. So we'll go to layouts, and I always forget what that is. In fact, this will be the time where I pull up Creative Worship and show you that. I apologize, I should have had that ready to go, and I don't know why I didn't. I set the shortcut up, but then I didn't follow the shortcut to where I was going. So pardon me 1 second while I click down and get to that right place. Here we go. Uh-oh. Well, that broke. We're going to go to creativeworship.online. Creative Worship used to be available just as a disk, but I'm going to log into our digital version that we just released this year. There's Series B, Quarter 3, and here is the second Sunday after Pentecost. I'm going to choose that service, and I think what I'm going to do is actually switch this to the 4:3 and save that image rather than adjusting my size because I don't remember what the right resolution is. And we'll hit cancel, go up to edit slide templates. We're going to look at Creative Worship in a little bit more in depth in just a moment. I'm going to change my background, browse here. There we go, more of the square. Perfect. Now I am going to want to change the font color. Oops, that's the background font color to white so that it's easily read. And you will notice that the preview doesn't always update. When you go back into it, it will. And we'll do that. And then we'll also go to the headings and make that white. And the rubrics we're going to keep as red, but we're going to go with a bright red. All right, let's see how that looks. Red on green is always tough. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but at least for this purpose, I want to show what this looks like. All right, so it'll take a second because I updated a lot of different styles and may take longer than I thought. That's one of the fun things with doing these presentations is I'm streaming live. It's using up a lot of my system resources, and so it tends to drag things down more than I would like. And in this case, I may have done too much because I do have my browser going. I have the presentation, my PowerPoint, all of that is up and running. Yeah, that's starting to fail. All right, well, we will let that run for just a second. Let's go back into Creative Worship. So Creative Worship is a collection of resources that you can use as you plan your services. And if you are familiar with it, you will see that it looks very familiar what we had before. But we'll go back and look at what you can see. You have a quarter worth of services. Every service you can choose to go to. When you choose the service, you have all of the text files, which I'll pull up and show you what's included in that. This is where I got the hymns. Oops, and let's see, where's that going? I think it's going to go on my other screen here. I'll drag it across so you can see it kind of lays out the service with suggestions. You have graphics that are available, so like this main image, backgrounds for PowerPoints, and then there's always some level of music to include in that. What I really want to highlight, though, for today's presentation is this LSBX file, Lutheran Service Builder X file. When I click on that and download it, it will open and say, which service do I want to apply? And default it to June 3rd. I'll plan this service. And you can see that all of these things are chosen and modified. So if you're using Creative Worship, you're not going to have to like build and pick and choose which elements you're going to copy and paste into your folder or into Word or Publisher or whatever you're using. You can bring it into LSB and choose from the different options like title. As we gather, those are the different ones, and go through here the pre-selected hymns. Everything's in place for you, and then you just go to export it, and you have this very creative worship service that's tied to the lectionary. We can even switch it to our Creative Worship style sheet, and it'll look like it's just coming off of the disk or off of our new web service. Whoops, except I think I broke it. Sorry about that. Well, that's fun. These things always happen while I'm live. Again, I have too many system resources being used right now. So I would recommend that as you are presenting or preparing for your service, maybe not live stream it. There we go. Okay, so let's go back to that. Here we go, second Sunday after Pentecost. Edit this bulletin. We'll see if that works. Otherwise, I may have to close some things. So there we go. We're back into the service. And you can see that all listed there. So that process that I went through of modifying it to meet my needs, selecting the hymns, a lot of that is already done for you with Creative Worship. It's just chosen by our editor. And so Mark puts that together. And it's meant to be pick and choose which things you use. It's not meant to be take this out of the box and use it, although you could. But it provides you with all of these different elements so that you can modify the service to meet your congregation's needs while still using the same readings, using new music and new images, making it very creative. All right, so that's one of the last things that I want to talk about. We talked about the presentation view. Let's go back and look at that one more time. There we go. It just took a while to update. But that's a pretty nice presentation view. And it's tied within the church here. You've got that nice green. There's your rubrics with that kind of light red. And we'll go through that. So now you can export that, save it as a PowerPoint, and you're ready to go. It ties with your service. It ties with your bulletin. That whole process is pretty easy to have both the setup of the service, your customizations, and export it. You can do all of that within minutes, really. All right, well, we are almost out of time. I don't have questions in the queue. I want to give you a quick preview of the online version, so I'm going to go back in here. But in the meantime, for those of you who have not already started using Lutheran Service Builder, you can download a free trial at lutheranservicebuilder.com. If you want to talk with somebody, I'm always happy to be the person that you reach out to, or you can talk with our software consultants. They'll work you through the whole process of determining if it's a good fit for your congregation, and if you're ready to buy, they can help you with that as well. All right, so while you think about the questions you'd like to ask and put them into the chat, I'm going to go back to my browser and show you two tools that you can use. The first one is called lutherancalendar.org, and you can go to that and you can say, okay, Pentecost 2. It's that same kind of calendar that you saw in Lutheran Service Builder. But when you click on it, you can view all the propers for the day, and not just view which the references are, but all of the details. You can also access this on your phone, so you can always access the lectionary when you need to. And one of the fun things about it is that you can also go to the 1-year lectionary or the switch between 1 year and 3 year. So that's all ready for you to go right there. Now, you'll see in here, plan the service. There's a free tool where you can start planning your services and making modifications. So if you want to plan out your hymns in advance, you can do that and click Add Hymn. And oops, for whatever reasons, things are not working for me all today. There we go. Now it popped up. And choose those hymns that you want. And you can place them in there. Now, The reason that we offer this is the start of the new online version of Lutheran Service Builder. So let me pull that up for you. When you go in here, it looks very similar, and it takes you all the way through when you start planning the service, that same kind of view, except now when you select the hymns, you also have the ability to preview them and see all of that information that we were talking about before. So this is the new online version of Lutheran Service Builder. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and select that. We'll close here. Let's go ahead and switch to bulletin view. And this bulletin view is going to say, it lets you pick your order of service, and then you can modify your service plan and your bulletin view right at the same time. And so if you want to click and drag stuff, you can do that. If you want to look at different suggestions, here's the invocation. And yeah, again, it's going slow because of all my bandwidth that I'm using for this live presentation. You can go through and add in different things. So if you want to look at like invocation, you can start searching for that and change out different things. Just like you can in Lutheran Service Builder, except it's all online and able to be accessed from anywhere with an internet connection. You don't have to connect it to your server for other people in your congregation to use it or in your church office. You can also go and have what we call bulletin formats, which are a combination of style sheets and formats like we showed before. So you can pick your layout, you can pick how content shows, all of it's previewed here. Now, like I said, this is still in testing. There's still some things we got to work out. There's still a few things we're going to add, like my worship resources. That should be coming later on this week. And we're going to roll it out to all customers in the next few months. So that's exciting. I just want to give you a quick look at that before we get back and take any questions that you might have. I'm not seeing any in the queue, which means that I'm either really good at presenting and answering all your questions, or it's too early in the morning and coffee hasn't kicked in yet, which I know for me is still kind of iffy. I had my coffee, but I'm feeling pretty tired still. So what I'm going to do is put my contact information back up on the screen. If you think of any questions after the fact, go ahead and send me an email or reach out to our software consultants. But I hope this presentation was helpful to you today to show you many of the time-saving tips and tricks that you can utilize within Lutheran Service Builder, because your time is valuable and there's more than enough things taking it up each day. If your service planning and your bulletin or presentation creation can be cut down to minutes, that's going to free up your time to do more things that you have to do. So thanks again for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to watch this, and I hope it was helpful to you. Please don't hesitate to reach out. But for now, have a great rest of the day. See you later.